Shit. Whatever. Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, now. Okay, hopefully that goes on. He will let me know if things go wrong. But okay, until now, what you guys have been doing is that okay, you write a piece of code in Python, you write it locally on your computer, you run it, it runs, it console logs a triangle, wow, and using stars, good job, all good. But we kind of want to go beyond that. You want something that can actually run in the browser, like Google, whatever, any sort of website that you can think of, basically that you can run in a browser. You can run on different laptops, on mobile as well, on various locations. So it's very different from what we've been doing so far, because first of all, it does not really run on your local computer. You just access the application. It also allows multiple users to use it at once. You can't really use your Python star triangle drawing app with multiple person at once. Doesn't really work. So there's no need to reinstall when you want multiple people to use your application. There's no need to transfer the code manually and then reinstall every single time. So it matters. Okay, then where does it really actually get installed? If it's not on my computer, then how can I use it? This is where the client server client architecture comes in, and it will all be installed in the server. So basically, the client server architecture or server client architecture, I don't know which one comes first, but basically how it works that we separate two components of the application. We have the client part, which is us, the users, and the server. In the client usually called the front end. So when you look up internships, they look for front end software engineers. This is what they're talking about. This is what users actually interact with. You use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Just Shirley, whatever. Just what Shirley kind of taught you. And this is where your fancy text comes in, your animations, different buttons you click, and all that. And yeah. And then in the backside, where your client is connected to, is the actual server that is located somewhere around wherever electricity is cheap. And the program actually runs there, and then it will interact with your client. Will interact with multiple clients at once to serve all of the users that are trying to use it right now. So few common language that use there is JavaScript, basically. We're only going to learn about JavaScript one because that's just what's might be simpler, just keep things all connected. But Python is also very common, and it's also very easy to use, just being Python. So if you don't really like JavaScript, but you're looking for another easy language to learn for your server-side backend, check out Python. It might work. So looking at, I'm going to use this fancy laser pointer. There you go. So looking at the diagram, we have multiple clients, and you're all going through the internet, and we're connecting to a server that's located somewhere, and the server will actually connect to the database. So if you think about Carleton Central, you try to register for a course, you click we'll add a course, whatever, yada yada yada, and then it spits out that long list of courses that are offered, right? That is actually any information that you want to have this saved, that it doesn't save directly on the server. You will actually have a separate thing called a database where all the information goes in. Some popular database that you may have heard about is MongoDB, or SQL, if you heard of that. It's okay. Why though? Okay, you guys just saw me unmute myself like 5 minutes ago. So
Wait, what happened?
I don't know. It's just muted automatically. Man, I don't know.
Wait, let me bring it up.
Yeah. Whatever. We'll continue. So you think, okay, why do we have the middleman here? It's kind of unnecessary to go through the middle step. I don't really like lining up. I just want to run to the safe and get my money. Well, it's because of security issues. If you think about Carlton Central, basically, you don't want other people to go around looking in Carlton Central database and looking at how many courses you took. Those are private information. So you can give that a try at a bank, but spoiler, but you kind of saw it. It's not going to work out too well for you. Real life GTA. So what you kind of have to do is go through the bank teller, and this is what we will enforce in the server client server architecture, and that is basically the whole point of it. It's the security wise. It also makes things more efficient, so like which communication path you're using. So I guess that is also there as well. So big X, don't try that. So now the question is, okay, so clients communicate with servers. Good, okay, whatever. But how do they do it? So one thing that we need to know is called HTTP. You probably heard about it. Like whenever you go to a website these days, you have this HTTPS : / yada, and then your website URL starts. Is that it's called Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You don't need to know what that means. It's not going to be on a test. But we're going to be using things that are called requests and responses. The client will make requests to the server, and the server will take the request, look at it, or analyze it, whatever, and then responds back to the client. It's kind of like how you have different requests to the bank tellers, and then they have different response back to us. So like this one teller, right? It's one teller that is serving multiple clients one by one in a line. Think of it like that. So if we talk slightly more about requests, there are different actions you can take at a bank as well, right? You can deposit your money, you can withdraw some money, or you can, I don't know, what else can you do? Like sign up for a new account, sign up for a new credit card. Similar to that, you can have different things. By the way, how's it going? Oh, nice. Oh, we're not being muted anymore. Nice. So similar to how you can take different actions at a bank, you can take different actions for your request as well. You can either get, post, put, or delete. Let me try to move my mic, by the way. I think I'm going on and off. So more about that. HTTP requests, we have 4 main types that you should probably know about. And by the way, I do have like a live coding demo coming out. I'm not going to be live coding like Shirley, but it is coming up. So if it's just theory, you're not really getting it, don't worry. We do have a thing coming on, and the slide will be uploaded. The demo code will be uploaded as well, so you have full access to it later on. No worries. So yeah, first one, get. I mean, it's kind of obvious, I guess. You're getting something from the server. So let's say you are in Carlton Central example. There you go. You're trying to get the list of entire courses that are available. That is a get request. And second thing is post is not as obvious, but this is used when you're trying to create something. So let's say for somehow you're a student, but you're trying to create a new course on Carlton Central. Good luck with that. Then you will be using a post request, or you'll be creating a new user if you go on, some other example. And post and put are very similar, and it's often, some people, they just say, oh, it doesn't matter, just use one of them, it doesn't really matter. But we try to differentiate it, and it will use mostly for updating. So when you already have a course on Carlton Central, COM 1405, but you want to update into the server. So the profs change or the time change. So you have to make a request to the server to say, hey, let's make that change. Let's update this. That's when you'll be using the put request. And finally, delete, just delete. That's pretty simple as well. So moreover, and then now we have the request. Okay, so now servers get the request, those 4 types of requests. Now, how do they respond back? As you guys, I'm pretty sure, I hope everyone kind of heard about the 404, error, where, you see that sad face, it's kind of annoying. That is one of the responses that you've been seeing a lot, and that is what a response is again, the HTTP responses. There are a lot of status codes like that. Like you see the numbers, like they start at, they're in hundreds, like there's 3 digits, there's definitely more than that. You should really check out this link. It has like the full list of when you should use certain status codes in which certain situations. Check them out later, but we'll only go through some, very common ones, very important ones. First, when everything went all right, the success codes, 200 is just okay. Everything went well. Usually when this was a GET request, it's like, hey, I want the list of all the courses. Then the server will be like, okay, there's your list of courses. There's 200, all good, everything. Okay, good. The second one being when success code for created, you usually use 201. And later on, and now non-success, the bad ones. When there was an error in the client, so there was something that client did, that's when we have, the 400s, 400 being bad requests, like you made a weird request, it doesn't really work. That's kind of weird. But 401, unauthorized, that's when you try to do something when you're, say, not logged in. When you're not logged into your Gmail and you try to access your email, thankfully they block you off saying, okay, you're not authorized to do that, so please stop doing it. 44 is the famous one. It means not found. When you enter in a random URL online, like googleu.whatever.com, they say, I don't know if that exists, but anyway, 44 is not found. I don't know what you're trying to do. Try again. So those are the errors with the client. But now if there was something wrong in the server, obviously there's a lot as well, but 500 is the most general one. You guys probably see a lot as well. Just spit out 500 and saying something went wrong. I don't even want to know what happened, or I don't want to tell you what happened, but something went wrong in the server, and that's all you need to know. And some extra stuff. Oh, nice. We still have so much time. I was originally told I'm only going to get 30 minutes for this, but look at us. Some extra stuff. I don't think you really need to know this, but it does. Like even in 2406, it gets kind of covered later on. But we try to really standardize how we create the websites. So we use a thing called RESTful design. Use that design. So how does clients and server actually communicate? As I kind of hinted before, you use their URL. So I don't know if you kind of noticed when you're randomly wasting time on the web, any websites. If you notice like the URL pattern in there, let's say I can't really think of. I don't know if you guys notice on YouTube, it's like youtube.com and then like v or something / and then some like random numbers, right? Like, do you guys notice that? I think the V stands for video, and that might be the pattern. Or if you guys try to share the YouTube video with like that starts from a certain time point, at the end of all the URL is going to add, t equals something, time equals something. So you use those patterns in the URLs to communicate between client and server. And by the way, guys, if any questions, just raise your hand. We have a lot of time. And that's what we're going to be doing. So when we say RESTful design, it means representational state transfer. Wow, okay. And you also hear a lot of APIs, which is basically like the communication thing. It's application programming interface. Wow, okay, big words. You don't really need to understand it, but that's kind of the standards that we use. So again, it's just very high level rules, standards of web application, web organization methods. It allows the client and server to exchange data more easily. So when you're not just simply saying, when you're not just simply transferring URLs, but you have some actual data that you want to transfer. For example, when you're trying to log in, your username and password, those are actual data that somehow needs to be transferred over. In that case, that's when we use a thing called JSON. JavaScript object notation. Again, it's a huge topic. It's basically a JavaScript object in that syntax transferred to the text. So basically, yeah, all this communication between client and a server can be only done by text. So whatever you do, whatever you think you're doing, they're only going to transfer by text. Like all the videos, all the data is going to get encoded. So in our case, when we want to transfer over JavaScript objects, like say username equals this, like what Shirley showed you just before, or you may have different properties or whatever. When you want to transfer over those, you have to convert them into JSON and then transfer over. It's just a standard. So if I kind of suggest you skim through this link again, just to like kind of know what is happening. Obviously, because this is a crash course, I couldn't like squish entire like half of 246 into this little presentation. So there's going to be a lot of please do your reading. Sorry about that. By the way, there's also some rules for requests and responses, as we kind of looked from before. And in the lower, and finally here, I just found this nice little Stack Overflow link. I heard they're dying, so I hope they do well. But anyway, but yeah, some random guy wrote a post on best practice for REST API design. I read it over. It's pretty helpful. It's pretty clean as well. So it was pretty easy to understand. So I really suggest that you guys kind of read it over later on. So let's try to get to some examples. I've been doing too much talking, not enough showing. So hopefully this will kind of help you understand kind of way. So yeah, let's say we have a bank. The URL is very fancy, examplebank.com. Okay, so let's say there's different actions that can be performed. So let's say first URL you can have is examplebank.com / whatever comes next, so customer. And we can specify which request type. So let's say that's the GET request. Okay, then what do we want to do with that URL? One thing that we can do is it's getting something, so we have to get something. We can get a list of all the customers. Okay, that could be something that can be done with URL. And the response, if everything goes through, the server can reply with 200 status code because that's just okay. But you can use the same URL and just change the request type a bit, and then that would completely change how the server reacts to it. Because obviously you cannot have. There's millions of actions that you need to perform, and there's not enough URLs. So to keep it clean, you can have the same URL but change the request type. So although the URL is the same, customer, but if you could just change the request type to post, that's different. Post, as we discussed before, is creating new stuff. So when you get a post request to that, server you can have it so that you create a new customer. And once that is performed by the server, it can respond with 201 created. Okay, good. So those were just all the customers, having a new customer, whatever. So let's try to get slightly more specific. If we keep on following this standards, this customer / something, so what else can we do with it? We can get the list of all the customers, but what if we want to get just information on one customer, like me? I don't need to know about anyone else. I just need to get my information. We can have URL pattern that goes /customer / ID. So that's just what I did. Basically, that later on you will see in the demo. That basically means any ID. So it can be integer or string or whatever. That is where your ID will go. And the smart library that we use, Express, it will recognize that. Okay, I heard something. Okay, whatever. Let's say we put a GET request to there. Then the server can look at the customer with that specific ID, look up the information, and pass it on to the client. And again, reply with 200 OK status. So same URL again, you get the idea, but different request type. Put, again, as we talked about before, is the updating. So it will be updated customer information with that specific ID. This person moves, so they have a new address. What to do? So we need to update them. Server can perform the necessary actions and reply with 204. I didn't show that before. That all that means is just okay. That it kind of went well, but I don't really have anything to tell you. It just went and like okay, it's success. You can kind of use OK for here, 200, pretty much same thing. I just wanted to show that other things existed as well. Finally, again, the same thing. If you want to delete something, you get the idea. Delete, reply with that. But one thing that you kind of want to know here is that the word choices that you use in your endpoints. So those are endpoints, like because it's the end of a URL endpoint. You kind of want to make sure you're using nouns nouns all the time. That is the standard. And it really, once you kind of like start working on it, you may have a point where you kind of realize, okay, it may have been better to use nouns. And that's kind of because all the verbs are getting handled by the request type anyway. Like if you have a endpoint that says get user and then the request type is get, like, oh yeah, of course, like whatever, like there's no need. So always try to use a noun at the endpoint. It will really, really make your life easier, and it's just a standard. Oh, nice demo now. So if you guys look on Discord right now in the announcements, I hope it's up there. There should be an announcement with the link to the slide, by the way. I should have mentioned that a long time ago. But there should be a link to the slide. And in the slide, if you just scroll down a bit, you should see the slide with that link. So, and we can download the demo and we will kind of go from there. One thing, oh yeah, we'll be using Express. This is one library importing thing that really makes your life easier. If you take 2406, you'll kind of understand it. You initially learn how to do stuff without Express, and then which is like really annoying and tedious. Then at one point they finally teach you Express, and then you realize, oh wow, the life is actually it's kind of easy. But we'll be using that from the start. So let's kind of move over the code. Actually, I need to show you from the beginning, right? So let's open up a new one. But yeah, let me know how the downloading of the code is going. If it goes wrong, raise your hand. If it goes well, just stay quiet, and we'll kind of continue in 3 minutes. And battery saver is on. Okay. All right. So from what I know, you guys were all to install Node before coming, though, right? Am I correct on that? Can I get a nod or like a Oh, nice. Okay, so we all have Node. That's good. That's a good start. Man, I didn't want to start from there. So I don't know what you guys are using as your editor. I use VS Code. If you're using something else, just open up a command prompt. Let's create a new directory, however you want to name it, and then you can go there on your command prompt, and we'll kind of start from there. Again, let's give it 30 seconds, give or take. All right. So let's say, hopefully, you download the code. Hopefully, it should you can download it as a zip file. By the way, if you don't know how to use Git, just download the zip file, unzip it, and you have the things. And you create a new folder. You travel to it on your command prompt, or you can just open up a command from the current directory, and you did that. Okay. So what we can do here is type. How do I zoom in?
Command plus.
Yes, that is. I don't know. Does that help? Do that. All right, npm stands for Node Package Manager. So it is part of Node. Whatever kind of like the actions that you do inside Node, would most of the time start with npm. So to start, we would obviously say npm init, and then press enter. It will ask you some names. You can answer these if you want. Don't answer if you don't. It doesn't really matter. It's just package name, the version, and whatever, description, and whatever. Okay, yes. I hope that worked. Okay. Oh yeah, it did. So once you see the package.json created there, then Node. We created a Node project here. This could be your potential future web app. And it kind of includes all the things that we kind of skipped through with, name, version, description, yada, yada, yada. And then because I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using Express. So we'll be installing that before we start anything. So let's do npm install Express. Express. Let me press enter. It does some fancy stuff. Good. Boom. And now you'll see that your package.json has changed. You create a new little thing with dependencies, and then it lists Express in there. Perfect. So that's how you kind of check which libraries or dependencies that you have installed and the version of it. Oh, it also creates a package.json. Whatever it is, you don't really need to worry about it, and creates a node modules folder. That's basically all your installed files going. So it would contain files about Express. You don't really want to touch that. And a question, nice. Oh, Express. So it's npm install whatever you want to install. So it's npm install Express. Might be good to have those somewhere. So I'll add it as a comment on my, the demo file. So if you just re-download it later, it should all be there. All right, so we created a project. Okay, nice. wasn't really thinking this through, so let's see if we can just like copy the files over. Let's copy, paste. Nice. Okay. Boom. We have our server file. We wrote that in like 5 seconds. There you go. If you downloaded what I did, you can probably just copy and paste it in there as well. So that's the server that we're gonna have. And if you look here, you have another folder that's called public. Let's copy and paste that over as well. There we go. So this is a very, 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 very simple web application that we have here. You have your server and you have your client. So because your client, so reason why it's under one folder called public is just to kind of distinguish it from where the server is. That's one thing. And you may realize the client is actually composed of two things: the client JS and the home HTML. And sorry, I see a question there. Does it have to be public? No, it doesn't really have to be, but I'm believing that's a standard if you want to make your, if you want your folder to be public, like why not name it public? If you want something to copy, you can name it private. Okay, really nice. Some common names you will see later on, I guess, are like SRC for sources, and yada from there. It doesn't have to be public; it can be anywhere. But yeah, we have our server and we have our client. We see two files now for our client though. So you talked about how HTML is used for clients, but why is the JavaScript there? And that is because even the client, it does have any functionality that your web page view should get. It's going to be written by your client JavaScript file. So any buttons you have or anything, you will need a JavaScript file to kind of check when the button is pressed. Okay, what are you going to do? To send a request to your server, all that, you're going to need a client JavaScript file as well. So before I go through all this, let's actually run it and just see what it kind of is even. Let's just start from there. So when you want to run something, I'm pretty sure Shirley told you, we go node and then the name of the file you want to run. In our case, it's just server.js. And by the way, if there's like one file that you know is in there with that starts with SCR, just you don't have to type out the full server. Just have SCR, press tab, and it just autocompletes if you didn't know that. All right, so we run that, and then and wow, we have a very simple, nice looking, clean looking, organized web page, home app. There we go, home page. Let's open up that. Okay, so from here, do you want me to like kind of show you what it does first, or should we like go through the code first? Shout something out. Codes? Okay, sure. Actually, it might be function first. That might be easier to understand. Well, sorry. Anyway, first thing that we kind of see here is that server started listening on port 3000. I'll talk about it later. But we see the second line that is important: receive a GET request to nothing. And that is because when you're I'm not running this on an internet or anything. It's being run on localhost. It's only running on my computer. So that is our URL. That is our starting point. And so because of that, let's go to network, and then boom. If we do that, we see a network request has been created to localhost 3000 and nothing after. And to respond to that, as the request is made, the server says, okay, I receive a request to that, boop, 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 do whatever. And then we see that it responded with a status code. It's supposed to be 300, but 304 just means not modified. So like, because I ran it just before, it's already saved in the cache. It didn't really need to do anything else. That's what it means. Okay, so let's try. I mean, basically the idea is kind of the same from here. It's just, I just press the get customer button, and we can kind of see there. We made a request, customer, localhost 3000/customer. That request was sent to the server. The server received it, and it did whatever. It really didn't do anything, and it just responded back with a status. So let's kind of see the code on that, I guess. Let's begin from server, actually. So to begin, we have, because we're using Express, we have this import function, basically, const express require express. Require is basically the import that you are kind of known to right now. And you can use the word import, but it's just not part of common JS module syntax. It might be different on your template but whatever, it's not here. So I just use request. This can be used depending on your situation. And to actually use the express functionalities, you need to run the express function, and we can save it to a variable. We'll just name it app. These 4 lines, by the way, like you kind of need it on your every express app. So like it's gonna be copy and paste probably no matter what. And these are called middlewares. Yeah, we kind of jump into difficulty here. So we say app.use express JSON. It's just one of the functionalities that JSON provides. Basically, this is it's actually really helpful that these are done automatically with that one line of code. So basically, what that does is that, do you guys remember JSON from just before? This client and the server communicates with JSON, and because JSON is actually a text, not really it's a string. So what it kind of happens that when the client sends any JavaScript object, it translates into JSON, send it to the server. Server gets that and then retranslate it to JavaScript. That process all gets handled automatically. Boom, one line, done. Second part, another middleware that we're using, app.use express static public. All that means we're using this folder called public. So you should really look. All that's that's just saying, okay, server, we're using that folder called public. You need to maybe you should take a look at what files are inside, because I'm going to be making requests to them, and you should be ready to use them. So just to begin, let's say, oh, here are customers, 1, 2, 3, JavaScript object. You guys just saw from Shirley's presentation. And now this is where the actual responses happen. So this is where let's start from the first one. So when we first just straight up went to the website, localhost 3000, that URL, no more, no less. The terminal mentioned that its request was just to slash. So whatever request that you'll be making from the client, you need to have a specific receiver, I guess. Say, okay, to this URL, we are gonna get requests. So be ready to catch that. And then in there, obviously, we'll have requests and responses. So once we catch it, what do? You console log it just because I had to show you. And then we'll respond with the status of 200. And you will also send the file, which is right there. And that is just our basic HTML homepage. So we're just telling the server, okay, do some action. So this is kind of like the flow that you're going to be doing as well. That URL, which request type, and what we do, whatever that thing happens in here, and then let's respond back to the client. Response, what's the status, and what are we doing? This send file function, there's variations of it. You can do other actions, and then you just have to end with a send function. Whatever you do, so if you look on the documentation, you'll see there's send status, send file, or just send, or status and just file. They're all valid. You just have to remember you gotta end with something that has send in it. So this could have been serve file this, and then a send function in the end separately. Anyway, status 200 send file, send the file at that directory /public home HTML, and that will be your homepage. And once we click the button for /customer, get /customer, again, it was caught here. /customer URL, look for get requests and do some action. In our case, it's just console logging. Response status 200, and fun stuff, JSON customers. Because what we kind of wanted to do when we press the button, boom, we wanted to get the entire list of customers right there. Oh, and by the way, oh my God, Google developers, Chrome developers, Edge developers. If you're using a web browser that is Chromium based, so Microsoft Edge, Windows Chrome, I think it's it's just F12. If you're on a Mac, I don't know, figure it out, Google it out. But if you're on Windows, it's F12 Edge or Chrome, and you should see there's something called Edge DevTools, or Chrome might be different. I use Edge, but In here, you can see the elements in the HTML page. In the console, that is the console you kind of have in the server. So any print, any console logging that you do on the client will happen on the client side. Any console logging that you do on the server side happens at the server side. Huge difference. So you actually need to like keep two brains alive for each of the client and the server and just keep things separated. By the way, okay, so we did guest customer just because that's the example that we talked about. Let's see if we can get a full list of customers. And there's some things in the middle I'll kind of explain when we get to the client file. But after whatever, we get our full list. Good. Speaking of which, let's get to the client.js file. So when this button is pressed, or let's start from HTML file. Okay, one thing that we don't really cover here in our presentations in Shirley's and mine is about HTMLs. And that is obviously because of time constraints. Speaking of which, we only have 7 minutes left. Oh my God. But this is relatively simple compared to JavaScript. So like, sorry guys, but read about it at W3 School. That's how I learned it. It is a great website for learning anything Python, Java, JavaScript, anything HTML as well. The link is up there in the slide. You should kind of know about it. But basically, it's just a markdown language. It's not a programming language. Don't say HTML is a programming language. Someone will come after you. But basically, you have a header, you have a body, and inside the body, you can. Oh, you first need to mention where your actual JavaScript file is that you're going to be using for this specific page. That's one thing. And then once you do that, you can mark little different stuff. So H1, that's like a title. So homepage. You saw how it was in like thick bold letters. Homepage. And I wanted to have like 5 different buttons. So button, different IDs. And on click means, okay, what are we doing if this button is clicked? I mean, if a button is not going to be clicked, why is it there? So on click, we're going to run that function, which lives inside client.js file. And that's just the name, like the text that you see on the button. So going to that, we see from here, the button that I pressed was get customer button. So, okay, when we click that, what kind of happens? We go to the get customer function. Okay, so you move on to the client.js file, and coincidentally, it's the first one that you see on the list. So here we see a function. One thing that is different that from usual functions that Shirley just showed you, it has that fancy word there, async. Anyone know what that stands for? Yellow. Asynchronous. Yes, all that's saying, this function is asynchronous. So for those of you that like doesn't really know what that means, usually all codes will run synchronously. So by that I mean it's gonna run line by line without waiting for the previous line to be completed. So for like console logs, it doesn't matter because like whatever. So it's gonna learn console log line, and the things happen when you're running a function, right? Some functions can take longer than others. Like think about when you're clicking a link to the URLs or different website. Some connections take longer. So, and sometimes we want to wait for that connection to be fully complete and for the function to finish its action. So we have an actual response from the function or return value from the function that we can work with later on in our code. If you want to do that, you would use what is called the async await. So just when you're defining a function, tell this one's going to be asynchronous, watch out. And later on, when you actually have something that you need to wait for, you say, oh, wait, okay, so stop. So you get to the line, you run it, and then before you move on, just wait, And once it's done, it's going to move on to the next line. And again, you say, okay, wait for this. And then you do your whatever console logs. So for guest customer, I just have 2 simple console logs that we just saw here. Get customer button is pressed. Wow, get ready to fetch. And this is another big one as well. How we actually communicate. What is the function that we use to communicate between client and the server? It's the fetch function. So in the fetch, obviously, it takes a long time, so you have to make it asynchronous. First, we have the actual URL endpoint that you want to send to. Here, because it was a get customer, we specify, you don't need to specify the entire URL. It's only the ones after. So we say /customer, and the method is going to be get. Note the wait. Nice. So once that is run, the server catches from what we just saw before. And that's basically how they communicate. The client says, fetch this, and the server says, got ya. Anyway. And then after that, we have this thing called response.json. Again, that is just saying because the communication happens in JSON, you need to parse it back to a JavaScript object. Because if you don't do that, what we kind of have here, oh, this is what it looks like before parsing. If you don't parse it, if you don't do the response to JSON, this is like how it looks. Like it's just a random variable with a bunch of things inside. Like no, okay, it's some understandable stuff like URL type, but you can't really work with it. All the important information that we're concerned about is gonna be inside body there. So we want to be able to fetch it out somehow. Anyway, so you parse it by saying response.json, and after parsing, what you get a nice, clean JavaScript variable that we can actually work with. 1, 2, 3, Richard Victor Kelly. We're kind of running out of time. We're really running out of time. So post, I think, is the same thing basically. So let's see. I gotta do something fun, Oh, never mind. It's different. Anyway, time. Yeah. Sorry, guys. This is going to be the last one. But look through it more. Ask if you have any questions. Ask any mentors. Feel free to come up to me as well. One thing that I would finally like to mention is the post one. So how it works, because Get is kind of different. Get purely relies on URLs, so you don't need to send any more additional data to the server most of the time. But for post and put, it's different. You need to know which user you're creating. So, okay, so like say it's for post. So for post request, you're creating a new user, and that's our data. We want to create a new customer called Shirley. So we need to give more information about Shirley, right? We need to give her a name. We need to give her ID, password, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And the fetch function will be slightly different in that case. How we do is you put in a square bracket and you kind of extend it out. You say, okay, the method is post, and you need to make sure, and we need to do something called setting headers. When it's a data, like a JavaScript object that you want to send, you have to say, okay, it's going to be application/JSON, and that's going to be your content type, and you will put it in headers. And because we actually have the data, again, you have to change it back to JSON. Because it's a JavaScript object, you have to say body, JSON stringify data. And our data is just, name Shirley. Again, note it had a wait, and once the server, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Once the server caught it, should have turned up Discord, but anyway. What the hell? Are we actually gonna die? But, okay. URL, customer, post request is actually something we should be concerned about. Okay. Post request, URL to the URL/customer is a post request, whatever. And once, let's log that. So if I actually press it, okay. If I actually press it, we can access what the data that was sent from the client using this request.body.name. Because I defined the data to be inside the data, the information that I wanted was name equals Shirley. I can access that directly by saying request.body.whatever. And then from here, I'll just add it as a new thing onto our list of customers, and we can respond back. Again, note, because I'm not sending any files here, I don't need a send file function. I can just use send status and whatever status, and that is good to go. Blah, blah, blah. And we see that, once we do that, we can press this here again. And then we see Shirley is added. It's kind of small, but yeah. Those two buttons is basically the same thing, but it's that just includes an ID. So yeah, when there's an ID, all you need to do is put /column ID, and it kind of knows that's your ID. And you can access whatever the variable that you kind of put there by saying request the params. That's just short for parameters. Params.id, because I wrote ID there. But that's how you access it, and it can be communicated via URL. And it seems like we're running out of time, really. And that's about it. Get, put, delete, all similar stuff. Only additional stuff is ID. So please look through the code. I don't think I wrote that many comments, but you kind of get the idea. It gets repetitive once from there. So yeah. Oh, and one really last thing. When you have the application, you need to write this thing down. app.listen and the port that you want to have it in. The reason why our URL is localhost 3000, that's the port name. We're using port 3000, and you need to specify that in your server code. We're, blah, blah. That's just the arrow function that you saw before. Console log, server started, whatever. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for listening. Hope it was helpful.